Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for joining once again on Ramadan Refresh with Taha, Ghayyur, brought to you by Sound Vision Canada and produced by Muslim Network TV. My friends, brothers and sisters, there is a beautiful hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. نِعْمَتَانِ مَغْبُونٌ فِيهِمَا مِنَ النَّاسِ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ فِيهِمَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. The Prophet, peace be upon him, says that good health and spare time, as-sihha wal-faragh, good health and spare time or leisure time are two things with regard to which most people are deluded, are deceived. Most people take it for granted. And this hadith is so relevant, especially in the month of Ramadan, when we realize that, there's so much that happens in the month of Ramadan that we cannot take some basic things and necessities of life for granted. We cannot take our health for granted. We cannot take our time for granted. We cannot take our food for granted or water for granted or shelter for granted. Nothing could be taken for granted. And Allah is saying that we actually not only take it for granted essentially, but we actually waste these resources. The Prophet ﷺ is telling us that we are basically being deceived by these blessings of God that many people don't have. And you don't appreciate it until you lose it, until you lose the ability to use your time for something that you wanted to do in terms of goodness or khair, or until you lose the opportunity to be able to actually, be able to pray or do sadaqah, especially if you have an issue of health that you're dealing with. So I wanted to share with you a few points related to wastage of time in particular. And when it comes to specifically procrastination, which is laziness, procrastination. And there's an interesting saying that procrastination is a fertilizer that makes difficulties grow. So, it's the wrong type of fertilizer that you really do not need in your life. Fertilizers may be a good thing, but fertilizer, when it comes to procrastination, it actually fertilizes nothing but problems, as they say. And there's another interesting saying where it says, tomorrow is the only day in the year that appeals to a lazy man. The only day that a lazy person wants is really tomorrow, because you know what? It never comes. It never happens. It never actually takes place. Procrastination is like a credit card. It's a lot of fun to use it, but when it comes time to pay, it's really difficult, right? And which reminds me and all of us that there is a high price to be paid when it comes to procrastination and laziness. Nothing in this world is free, and when it comes to procrastination, it is even more true. You are going to pay the price, both in terms of your health, in terms of financial costs, social costs. Nobody wants to be around and work with people who are procrastinating. Nobody wants to take a risk of relying on people who are going to be lazy. There is financial cost. There is health cost as well. There are studies showing that people who are procrastinators have more health problems, low immune system, they have weaker immune system, they have heart problems, they have more anxiety, stress, whole bunch of things that come with being a person who is a chronic lazy person or chronic procrastinator. It is actually, according to studies, 20% of people around us are actually procrastinators. May Allah protect us from being one of those. But the good news is that it is a lifestyle. It is a learned behavior that you can unlearn. It is something that you can actually change. It's in you to change. And we ask Allah to allow us to be those who are constantly working on ourselves so that we can change, inshallah. And there are many reasons why people are procrastinators. And some are valid, some are not, including things like people have anxiety about something. They find it too overwhelming, or they have a so low self-esteem or self-worth. They're not sure if they can actually make it happen. Sometimes it's because they underestimate, what it would take for them to actually achieve a task or a project. Sometimes they're too distracted. And also perfectionism is a big thing. A lot of people want to be perfect the first time. So they become lazy until until they get it right, which they almost never do. And then there are, of course, things like workaholism. You're working, 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 busy, busy, but you're not actually accomplishing much. You're not being productive, And then there's also indecisiveness. People who are constantly not clear about what they want to achieve in life. So all that being said, let us look at a couple of ways that you and I can, inshallah, work towards getting better at managing our time and ensuring that we fight procrastination. Number one, remember that Allah tells us in the Quran, فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. Run towards Allah. Run, take refuge in Allah. Run towards Allah when it comes to especially good actions. سَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. And hasten and compete with each other in gaining the istighfar, gaining the forgiveness of Allah. And that is even more true and more important in the month of Ramadan. Number two is to take that first step. Don't wait. Don't wait till tomorrow. Start now, start today, whatever it is. Even if it means that you have to put something on calendar that tomorrow I'm going to make an appointment with somebody to help me actually achieve something. Whatever it is that I need to do. That is your first step. And number three is to break down any action you want to do. Even if you're, let's say, getting lazy about reading the Quran in the month of Ramadan, or memorizing the Quran, or doing sadaqah on a regular basis, whatever it is that you're struggling with. It could be something else that you're struggling with in terms of career, in terms of starting a new degree, whatever it is. Ask yourself, how can I break it up into smaller tasks and just start with just dedicating 5 minutes a day, nothing more than that, 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes at a time. And amazing, there is that thing called 5-minute miracle, that when people start doing things for 5 minutes, it actually extends into 10 minutes and 20 minutes, and it becomes a habit. And then number four is give yourself permission to make mistakes. It's okay. You're going to make mistakes, and that's what Allah wants. Allah wants actually us to be people who are constantly making mistakes, but at the same time come back to Allah and learning from our mistakes. Allah loves those people who are constantly making mistakes. They have faults, their weaknesses, but they're recognizing those mistakes and coming back to Allah. And that's a beautiful way of fighting procrastination. Number five is, if you haven't been already doing so, start praying 5 times a day. Commit yourself to doing the basic fara'id, basic obligations in Islam, because our deen is all about action. And as Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah said, that if you want to fight procrastination and laziness, start praying 5 times a day on time. That in itself will help you in amazing ways in terms of fighting this disease of laziness and procrastination. And the last but not least is to learn from the inspirational people around you. There's so many, I'm sure, amazing people around you, or in the community, or in your lives, or in our history, that you can actually look up to and see how incredibly, amazingly productive people these people were. The fact that some of them lived very short lives, and their impact today is so amazing. Think about those people like Malcolm X rahimahullah, who barely was an Orthodox Muslim for 9 months after he accepted Sunni Islam or Orthodox Islam, and yet his impact today is unbelievable. There's hardly a Muslim in North America that does not owe their Islam to Malcolm X, a person who was so productive, or Imam al-Nawawi, who passed away in his early 40s, and yet, there's hardly a household that does not have Arba'in al-Nawawi, 40 Hadith of Nawawi, or Riyadh al-Salihin. There are many people like that in our lives or in our history who had very little time, but yet they were so productive. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to repel procrastination on our daily basis. Ameen. Thank you for joining once again, Ramadan Refresh, brought to you by Sound Vision Canada and produced by Muslim Network TV.